Hi everyone, I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's video is called Trolls, Titans, and Petrified Giants. I actually got the idea for this video when I was watching a new movie called Troll, and I highly recommend it. I thought it was really well done. And this is a movie that is based in Norway, and it's just basically about a troll that, actually, I don't want to give any spoilers. It's about a troll. How's that? But I want you to take a look at this troll here, because if you aren't familiar with the mythology surrounding the trolls in Scandinavia, they are all very rock-like. And right here is a scene from the movie where it is disguising itself looking like a rock. And, it just got me thinking about all of the places that we see trolls or giants that have been turned into stone or turned into mountains. There's another movie that I really like called A Boy Called Christmas. And in that movie, I was hoping to find an image of this, but I could not find an image. He has to go past the sleeping giants to get to the city of Elfhelm. And as he is going past the sleeping giants, they are actually two what you would call mountains, but very clearly have faces in them. And then, of course, we have the trolls that turn to stone in the Hobbit book and in the Hobbit movies. And it's actually also mentioned in the Fellowship of the Rings, where they're telling a story about how this happened to Bilbo Baggins, and he saw these trolls get turned into stone. So it is a very popular storyline among trolls and some giants that, for some reason, often when hit by sunlight, they were turned into stone. So now this one goes off track a little bit. It's not that the troll or this is actually a titan, was turned into stone, but that it is actually encased inside of a wall. And this is from an anime called Attack on Titan, which I've only seen the first season, but it was excellent. Probably one of the best animes that I've watched, because I have watched a few. And this is, again, I kept saying the whole time that I was watching it that it reminded me of Norse mythology and the way that it was treating these titans and the way that they were inside of this wall. And so, these entertainment outlets that I keep seeing all of these trolls in really got me realizing that there are so many stories, like typical giants. There are so many stories worldwide about trolls, and many of them are associated with stones, with rocks, with mountains. And I'll start off with the Scandinavian stories of trolls, since that's what got me thinking about this, was that movie that was based in Norway, and they are called the Jotun. Passing under the shadow of Norway or Sweden's great mountain ranges, you might notice that the countryside is littered with boulders. These boulders didn't arrive at their final resting place by accident. Many of them were weapons of the giant trolls who once roamed the land, and a few of them have an even more spectacular history. They are the bodies of trolls themselves, turned to stone because they were exposed to daylight. Trolls are humanoid creatures who dwell deep in the wilderness of Scandinavia. Their appearance ranges from monstrous to eccentric to cute, but they are almost all unfriendly, no matter how charming they might look. Unless you are a quick thinker, an encounter with the troll never ends well. And this just tells us here that there are two types of Scandinavian trolls, and we're just mainly going to focus on the first one, the Jotnar, and again, I've seen it called Jotun when we were studying Norse mythology, who borrow their name and many of their characteristics from the ancient Norse ice giants, are superhuman characters. They tower above your average man, supported by colossal, stony limbs. Their features are rugged, like stone, worn down by the weather, and their hair is wild. Some of them are so large and unkempt that plants can even take root in their skin. And in the movie Troll that I watched, this was used as camouflage. The ugliest Jotnar can have single eyes, like a cyclops, or multiple heads. So we're going to move from the Scandinavian troll to this Native American legend called Stoneclad. It says Stoneclad is a monster from Cherokee folklore. Details about Stoneclad vary from telling to telling. In some versions there is only one, while in others there are a whole race of Stoneclads. In some versions, Stoneclad is man-sized or indeed is a human witch that turned himself into an invulnerable monster. In others, he is a stone-skinned giant, like the stonecoats of the northern Iroquois tribes. In all cases, he has rock-like plates of armor that protect him from fire, cold, and weapons. He is defeated only through sapping his magical power by destroying his talismans or exposing him to menstruating women. That's interesting. So do you see a pattern so far? We keep hearing these stories of these stone-clad or stone-skinned giants. So I also happen to have the story that is mentioned there of Stone Coat, and this is from the Iroquois Nation. Stone Coat is the name of a mythological rock giant of the Iroquois-speaking tribes. In some tribal traditions, there is only one Stone Coat, while in others, there is a whole race of them. So it sounds very familiar to the ones that we just read about, the Stone-clads. Stonecoats are described as being about twice as tall as humans, with their bodies covered in rock-hard scales that repel all normal weapons. They are associated with winter and ice, and they hunt and eat humans. And that does sound also very familiar to the stories that we have heard of giants from the Native Americans eating humans, and these are definitely giants of some sort. In some legends, stonecoats were once human and became cannibal monsters as a curse punishing them for evil deeds, like the Wendigos of Chippewa mythology. In other legends, stonecoats were never human, but were a tribe of primordial man-eating monsters created by flint. Next, I'm going to read an excerpt from IndianCountryToday.com, and it says, Hobomok and Maushop, the twin stone giants, are the subject of numerous legends and tales. They once guarded the sacred mound where the shamans paid tribute to Penesi and the Morning Star. Morning Star sounds very interesting because that is a name that is used for Lucifer. Both twins had supernatural powers and were half human and half supernatural. I'm thinking Nephilim, maybe. Their demise was a great battle between them and the Thunderbirds. Maushop climbed up a massive tree when the rains created a monstrous flood. The Thunderbirds sent their lightning bolts, and the limb holding him gave way. He was drowned, and his body was washed up on the west end of Quinnipiac and is now seen and known as West Rock. Hobomok battled on valiantly and made it a ways to the northeast, where a flock of thunderbirds sent a barrage of lightning arrows that struck him, toppled him, and his prone body is now seen and known as Sleeping Giant State Park. Now, this obviously is not that, but I didn't have an image for that. I tried to find one and didn't have one that I thought would resemble a sleeping giant. So if you do have an image like that, I would love if you would send me a link to it. But it did remind me of yet another movie in which you see the same scenario where you have a giant of some sort who has been transformed into a rock, a mountain, in this case an island. And this is from the movie Moana. Next, we have Fleming, The Legend of Horsetooth Rock. And it says, driving west on Horsetooth Road, one sees a large rock with crevices on either side known to locals as Horsetooth Rock. And indeed, it does resemble a giant animal's tooth. And so that will be this right here. Climbers enjoy challenging themselves to ascend it. Photographers like to take pictures of it, and residents rely on its solid presence as a landmark. But there is a story to tell, a colorful local legend about some daring Native Americans and a sleeping giant. Yes, another one. The sleeping giant presided over the Valley of Contentment, where wildlife roamed freely under his protection. Native Americans wanted to hunt the animals, especially after a severe drought struck the area, and the buffalo, deer, and elk, which had sustained them, departed for greener grounds, all but those unattainable ones in the Valley of Contentment. At night, while the giant slept, his heart throbbed so strongly that it rose up above his body, a tempting target for a hungry tribe. Believing that the giant was weakest when the moon is full, one brave at last decided to attack him in order to save his people. Creeping up on the sleeping figure, the brave staked a rabbit nearby to attract the nighthawk which guarded the giant. It worked. The hawk was diverted by the prey long enough for the brave to attack with a magic tomahawk that appeared when most needed. And It says, slash, he attacked the beating heart on one side, and slash on the other, his life force taken, the giant turned to stone, leaving large gashes on either side of his heart. The giant's blood coursing freely down the mountainside colored the soil red. And so, yeah, so we have yet another story of a sleeping giant or some association of stones and giants. I came across this interesting article called Trolls in the Middle Ages. And the reason that I actually found this is because in the movie Troll that I spoke of in the beginning, one of the characters mentions that in Norway, there were laws as recently as the 1840s that prohibited men from communicating with trolls. Like that's how pervasive these trolls were in the country at that time. So I actually did try to look that up, and I was not able to find, at least online on a search engine, anything about any laws regarding trolls that recently. But I did find this one in which, let's just see, Trolls and the Law. Trolls weren't just fairy tales used to scare children into good behavior. During the Middle Ages, belief in trolls was serious enough that it found its way into Norwegian law books. There were numerous law codes against consorting with trolls by night, against waking trolls or waiting for trolls in order to gain their knowledge. These particular regulations date to the Norwegian national law of 1274. Scholars Gunnar Knutson and Anne Risoy, I'm not sure, note the fact that these stipulations made their way into the secular law codes demonstrates the belief in trolls and their inherent danger to the general population was relatively strong. Oddly enough, although they appear in law codes to date, there are no surviving criminal cases where someone was implicated for any troll-like offenses. And I did notice when I went past here, it's also talking about Icelandic trolls. Now, I mentioned that it was popular in the Scandinavian countries. And while Iceland is not part of Scandinavia, it is a Nordic country. And it also, trolls were well known there. So we have, meanwhile, and also I have to mention in the movie also that I mentioned, A Boy Called Christmas, that takes place in Finland, which again is not in Scandinavia, but it is another Nordic country. So this is strongly a part of the Nordic culture. Meanwhile, in the Icelandic, I'm just going to say Book of Settlements, a man runs into a male troll the size of a giant. This creature was sitting atop the cliffs named Drangar and was rocking his feet back and forth so that they touched the surf and he crashed them together to make spray. These cliffs, known as Landrangar, are 61 meters and 75 meters tall respectively, making the troll well over 100 meters tall. So I will just leave a link for all of these articles that I went to in the description box. And I also, discovered along the way, just by looking all of this up, that in Norway, at least, there are entire mountainsides named after the trolls. Like there's a troll wall that lots of hikers go and visit. So again, this is something that is very pervasive there. Even today. Now, I'm not saying that the people who live there still believe in trolls, but it is all part of their culture. And it is something that, I mentioned in my other videos. We have the flood, which all of these cultures worldwide speak of a flood. We have the giants worldwide. All of these cultures speak of giants. We even have what we might call the reptilians, the nachash, whatever you want to call them. There are stories of them worldwide. And now we also have trolls. And this is another, phenomena that is spoken of worldwide. And so while we know that a lot of these retellings of these creatures, they gain a lot of fictionality throughout time, you have to realize that most folklore is rooted in some sort of truth. And this is really where the aha moment came on for me, because in the truther community, there is a lot of interest in what we would call the rocks were giants hashtag that you'll see, especially on Instagram. But Petrified Giants is huge right now because people are waking up and they're realizing, again, that we're not told the truth about a lot of things. And there are a lot of really strange and mysterious things that have just been revealed to us most recently. Now, a lot of times when you see photos like this, you can just chalk it up to pareidolia. I can never say that word right. That is one word that I just can't pronounce. But anyway, And some cases it can be that, but there are other cases where you just have to look at it and scratch your head and say, wow, that really does look like a petrified giant or a petrified titan, whatever it is that you want to call it. And here we have another very interesting looking formation. This one, it's a little blurry, unfortunately. This is Sibs on Insta, and I actually follow them on Instagram because it is a phenomenal account, and we will be taking a look at it in just a couple minutes. But they really have been able to collect so many astonishing photos of what certainly does look like petrified giants. Now, just take a look at this. This is in Peru. You know, you can't get a mountain that looks more like a sleeping giant than that. It is just so clear. And I'm pretty sure that's actually the one that I used in my thumbnail for this video. I made it a couple weeks ago, so I haven't even looked at it, but it's amazing. Then we've got this one here, you know, very crisp, clear features on this. Now I'm going to head over to the account Sibs on Insta. So this is like a shout out to them. They don't even know I exist, but they have been amazingly helpful with their posts. So now some of them, they do alter just to show you what it might have looked like while it was still, you know, alive. But I'll leave a link to their account here, but it does show you, there's so many videos, and that certainly looks like eye sockets to me, a cheekbone, a jawline. So many profile photos, and Sibs on Insta isn't just petrified, like humanoid titans. Obviously, they've got some animals as well, but we're just mainly focusing on the more humanoid ones. This really reminds me of like Nefertiti, actually. This one does. Let's see. Just trying to find some of the more noteworthy ones. This one, amazing. This one here, I don't know. This one looks like it may have been carved. It almost reminds me of that face they always show us on Mars. And he also, that's another good thing, is that he tells you where these are at. So a lot of times when you look on Google Images, you can find the images, but you don't actually know where these formations are. And to my knowledge, they always share where they're from. So for example, this one is from Iran. Let's see. This one. Bulgaria. Like just let me see if I can get this a little bit bigger. Not really. A little bit. Oh, it was a video, that's why I couldn't. Oh, but now I made this screen too big. Okay. That definitely looks like a skull to me. This is Kazakhstan. I'm pretty sure I just saw that. Oh yeah, right here. I'm looking over here and it's like right here in front of my face. So Kazakhstan, huge skull. Here's another compilation that they made where it just shows, it's not letting me click on it. There we go. Hands. I mean, look at this. These petrified hands. That's a hand holding something. This is a huge fist that person is sitting on. This stuff is amazing. And honestly, like I could go all day looking at their stuff. So again, I highly recommend if you're on Instagram to go follow them there, because just I'm shocked at the kind of stuff that they come up with. So this one is also in Iran, very similar to the other one. I don't know if it was the same one. Wow, look at that. You can see, wow, that looks like what they would call like a Roman nose. You've got the brow ridge, eye socket, mouth. Wow. So anyway, you're probably wondering, what am I getting at with all of this? Well, what I'm getting at is that what we are hearing of as folklore, you know, from around the world is actually based in a truth. And I think that what we're seeing today with these petrified titans, you know, they're not just stories. They're not just told, you know, to excite children. This is something that is based on actual history. And I have to just reiterate the fact that especially in the Scandinavian and the Nordic mythology, they spoke of these trolls being turned to stone when being hit by sunlight. And that's something else that really got me thinking. So here in Genesis 19, starting with, I'll just call it 14b, this is the story of Lot and his family fleeing from Sodom and Gomorrah as it was being destroyed. He said, "Hurry and get out of this place because the Lord is about to destroy the city." But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. With the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." When he hesitated, the man grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and of his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away." But Lot said to them, "No, my lords, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared." He said to him, "Very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it." By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And so what has been associated in my mind is that something is happening in Sodom and Gomorrah, something catastrophic that is causing fire to rain down from the sky. And we know that this is something that is the Lord's doing. But Lot's wife, as they are supposed to be fleeing, she stopped what she was not supposed to do. It says not to stay there. And she turned and she looked at it. And so what I'm thinking is, could it have been something like this? Could this be similar to what she would have seen there? Now, obviously, I'm not saying that it would be the exact same thing because this is a man-made weapon here, and some actually even question whether this is actually a reality. But you get the picture. If she would have been in the vicinity of, I don't even know how far out she would have to be. If this ash and everything would have rained down on her, would it have caused her to turn into a pillar of salt or a pillar of stone? And so that's what I'm starting to think. Is this what happened to all of those petrified giants that we see, to all of the trolls that we hear about? Was there some sort of cataclysm associated possibly with the light of this, or simply just because people are associating light with some sort of huge weapon that caused ash to rain down on these creatures and turn them to stone? Now, am I saying that this all happened from Sodom and Gomorrah? No, I actually have a very different point in time where I think it's a possibility that this may have happened. Genesis 1, verse 1 and verse 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Now, I went over these 2 verses in more detail in another video that I made a while ago, and you will find that on my Question the Narrative playlist. I think it's called the Genesis 1-2 Reset. But what you need to understand about these 2 verses, and this is something that my pastor actually touched on in a sermon, and I was just floored and so happy that he knows, he knows this. But the Hebrew word for was could actually be became. So it could say, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth became formless and empty. So not that it was already formless and empty. God is a God of order. Why would he create something to be formless and empty? It doesn't make sense unless you actually use the Hebrew translation of became. Now the word used for formless and empty, the Hebrew is actually tohu va bohu. And that was actually used in another part of the Old Testament, and it is related to complete and utter desolation and destruction, something that was caused, something that was used as a punishment. So, my speculation is that these creatures, these giants, could have been alive during that time of this gap, before the earth became formless and empty. Something may have happened that they were the recipients of some sort of punishment from the Lord that created this desolation and created a land of these petrified giants. And, I mentioned the laws about in the Middle Ages where they weren't allowed to interact with the trolls. And I talked about in the movie how they claimed there are later ones from the 19th century. And the thing is that I firmly believe that a lot of these creatures that we look at in mythology as just being made up could actually be remnants from that period between verse 1 and verse 2 that possibly survived and were able to procreate for a time. I'm not sure how they would have survived the flood. That is something else that I would really need to think about. But my point is that I believe that these creatures that we are looking at could very well have been, I was going to say vaporized, but that's not even it. Rockified. Is that a word? This very well could have happened as some sort of divine judgment, some sort of massive weapon that people are associating with light. And it might have been the light that did this to them, or it might have been an after effect of something associated with the light, like an explosion, like ash being rained down. Those are my thoughts. And that is something that I really couldn't even stop thinking about the whole time that I was watching this troll movie. But anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. If you like my work, you can check out my Patreon page, and I will leave a link for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.